Welcome back to Families in Action here on KHTS AM 1220, your hometown station. I'm your co-host Mike Doherty today, along with the man with the most, your host, Cary. Action is my middle name, Quashen.
I like that. Hey, that was good,
I'm
huh?
waiting for, get ready to rumble.
That's right. Yeah, that was good, Mike. So, but talking about good is, this isn't so good. I mean, the show that we're doing, it's good because we're giving great information. But when you're looking at what we're talking about, it's some pretty scary stuff.
It is. John, how about 8 danger zones for teens behind the wheel?
You want to know all of them? None of them are a surprise.
Yeah, probably.
8 danger zones.
Well, they always refer to the driver's inexperience, and that's basically their non-exposure to the road. Same thing with the close calls. You and I all have had close calls, whether it be at intersections or you're being distracted for a moment and having to brake suddenly.
Or you want to get in the right lane and all of a sudden you look and it's like, whoa, I would have just got creamed.
Yeah. So all of that adds up to your experience as a defensive driver on the roadway, so that would help tremendously. Again, we talked about distractions, whether that be distractions by a cell phone or any other wireless device.
Playing with the radio, the CD,
Passengers.
something, yeah.
Whether it's Starbucks, whatever it may be, distractions are big. And then they talk about nighttime driving, but with the teenagers, not going to matter too much, other than their fatality rate, which is between 11 and 5, is skyrocketed. But
I wonder why. Maybe they're doing things they also shouldn't be doing in those hours.
you remember those days.
I do remember those
Yes.
days. A lot of drinking, a lot of partying, and I can imagine that's what it is.
I'm sure that's a contributing factor.
Yeah.
And that, of course, adds to when we talked about distracted driving, but not just reckless driving with your passengers and peer pressure and all of that goes along with it, but anything that has to do with impaired driving, whether it has to be alcohol, drugs, even prescription drugs come
Right.
into play, more with the senior community, but also with teens as well.
Especially these days, we have a prescription pill epidemic right now.
Yep. And of course, not using seatbelts, which seems like such a simple choice.
When we're talking about that culture a little bit on break is when the seatbelt law first came out, it was really crazy. Nobody wanted to follow it. Now we're at 98.5%.
Above that, actually, I think it's 98.7% compliance in California, which is unreal.
Yeah, that's great.
It is good.
And if you think about how many lives it actually saves, because what we're saying, how many of the deaths because of people not wearing seatbelts?
Yeah, those are a result of a fatal collision. 50% of those people die as a result of not wearing their seatbelt.
Seatbelts.
Wow.
Again, preventable.
So really, yeah, preventable. Laws are there for a reason.
They are.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons why now they're saying, as we were talking about, that the new teen drivers are not allowed to have passengers under a certain age in their car, because it's already been proven. It's been proven what can happen, and it increases the possibility of collision or crash a lot when you have, if let's say you have 3 teen passengers, now it's gone up exponentially, and you're in the danger zone. Absolutely.
We've had a couple of those collisions recently in the last 7 or 8 months. Burbank had a collision with 5 teens in the car. San Diego had one with 5 in the car, and up north as well. So they still exist. It's still happening, and the numbers are still large.
Now, John and I were talking about this before the show started, and we were trying to kind of remember where this took place. We know it was Santa Clarita, and it was somewhere around Bouquet, but there was a terrible accident. It's probably 10 years ago. A terrible accident, and the law enforcement people that showed up to this collision said it was the bloodiest, most horrible collision they'd ever seen in their life. And there was a teenage driver. She had her young sister in the car, and they had several teenage friends in the car. And as she was driving down the road, she was observed jerking the car from side to side. In other words, she was jerking the wheel to the left, jerking it to the right, and making it drive silly to make her sister laugh. And they had this collision.
They lost control.
They all died. It was horrid.
I bet you if you asked her or anybody else who's been involved in a collision like that before they left, hey, if you knew that this was going to result in the death of your sister or the death of your brother or the death of a friend, that would change their mind, I can guarantee you that it would. It's the same thing approaching junior high school kids and asking them how many wear their seatbelts and how many don't and why when they leave there and get a ride with their parents, even though it's only a mile away from school.
Right.
That if they knew that not wearing a belt could result in them losing their life, would that change their mind? And of course you get all hands up.
I think the great thing about these new cars too is if you don't put your seatbelt on, it beeps and makes noise now. So people know, oh, I got to put my seatbelt on.
That's a good thing.
That's a great thing.
It reminds me all the
It
time.
reminds me too. I do forget. I mean, not often, but I forget, and it's like, oops, I got to put it on. I was driving on the freeway last year, and it was raining, and it was on the 210, and there was a car crash right in front of me, and I must have got there literally right after it had happened. There was a guy, and he went through his windshield. Now, you can't go through your windshield if you don't have the seatbelt on. If you have your seatbelt on, you can't. So that's the first thing. But you couldn't even see what color he was. It was just completely blood, and he was just screaming for God to help him.
Oh.
And the highway patrol were there and all that kinds of stuff. But it's just, I'll never forget that.
That puts it in perspective,
I
doesn't
will
it?
never forget that. And I was talking to somebody else about it, and they said, you know what, it's crazy. If you're in a car and you're doing 60 and you hit something, your car stops. You don't. If you have those seatbelts on, you stop. If you don't, you're going 60. Right through the windshield. Scary stuff.
A lot of exposure out there on the roadway. It's a dangerous place.
It is.
You know what it really is? Isn't it the most dangerous thing we do every day?
It seems like it now, yes.
I would think so. We'll talk more about it when we get back from break. This is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS.
Oh, welcome back to Families in Action with Cary Quashen and myself, Mike Doherty, your co-host, and John Lutz from the California Highway Patrol. John, we're talking about teenage drivers.
Yes, we are.
And driving in general. And you know, why are we talking about it? Because we want them to live another day, to enjoy driving, and we want to enjoy driving, so we don't want to be a victim. We don't want to have a collision or a crash.
Exactly.
Well, how are we going to prevent it?
We want them to make good choices, and obviously being involved is step one. Not only, you're required to be with your licensed or permitted driver for 50 hours. Take advantage of that and utilize that in order to train your young driver. That's number one. Number two is to monitor what they do and how they do it, and walk them through the importance of vehicle maintenance and understanding the automobile, what it can and what it can't do, that it's not all about, Grand Theft Auto 5, that they don't do those things.
And you mentioned that earlier, that a lot of times it's a video game for them. They're so tuned into that.
It's more of a, the inexperience and not having felt that what it's like to lose control of an automobile, and then they get involved in a situation like that and they don't know what they're doing. So inexperience is big.
They don't know what that feeling when you come so close to crashing, that your heart goes into your stomach. It's like, they haven't felt that yet.
And they don't understand the tragic consequences of a crash. I mean, they drive these giant Escalades and these big automobiles with 15 airbags in them, and everybody feels super safe.
Yeah.
And if you ask anybody, most people feel safer in a larger automobile. It's an insecurity blanket.
Yeah.
The problem is that everyone out there on the road is built the same. The cars are built differently, but you're built the same, and so you cannot withstand impact of these vehicles that weigh 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 pounds smashing into each other. Your body can't, regardless of whether it's seatbelted or not.
Yeah, seatbelt or even airbags. I mean, they're there to protect you, but they can only protect you so much.
We always refer to 3 collisions. You've got the vehicle versus another vehicle, or vehicle versus a tree, for instance.
Right.
Then you have the person driving or the passengers versus the inside of the automobile. They're always going to impact something, and it does include your seatbelt.
Right.
And then there's the third collision, and nobody calculates that one, and that's your internal organs. Just as if you played sports and you got knocked playing football. You know what that's like, and that's minimal speeds compared to what it's like out on the road.
Well, you bring up a memory that I have. We went to church with a fellow who was a football star in high school, and he was in an automobile collision and ended up paralyzed, and had difficulty speaking and all of that as a result of a bad decision.
I believe that the most dangerous thing that we do every day is get in those cars. It's
Statistically, it says it is.
yeah, it's the most dangerous, deadliest thing we do every day. Think
Either
about
that or saying no to your wife. I don't know.
it. Well, we got one or the other.
Got to be married to have that problem.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. But so we really, and we only have a couple minutes. Let's talk about the culture, changing our.
We discussed this, off mic, but, back when they started the seatbelt law, people bucked it and didn't want to do it. I don't have to. Same thing with motorcycle helmets. I don't want to wear it. It's my life, et cetera, et cetera. And it took years and years and years to change the culture for people to believe that it's safer.
Right.
If you're driving like a knucklehead or you're flying down the freeway, it's not going to help you much. But it'll keep you there to help our cleanup. But it's not going to help you much.
And parents can also, if they really have to, and their teen just isn't getting with it and not paying attention, mommy and daddy can take the keys.
Mommy and daddy can take the license.
That's right.
Yeah,
I mean,
most people don't know that. When you can call the DMV when the driver has a provisional license, the parent can always call the Department of Motor Vehicles and say, I want that license held right now and suspended until they're 18. You can do that.
It's a privilege to have a license at 16. It's not a fact. It's a privilege. It's not a thing that's for everybody.
Yeah, it's not a right, for
It's
sure.
not a right, yeah. It is not a right. It's a privilege. So if you have a child that's driving not responsibly, take the license if you can't figure out another way to deal with it.
And if you're interested in educating your young driver as well as yourself, laws have changed a lot in the last 25, 30 years.
Oh,
So I encourage you to contact the local Highway Patrol office at 661-294-5540 and sign up for our Start Smart class. That's for newly licensed drivers and their parents.
I think you should give us that phone number one more
Yes.
time.
It'd be 661-294-5540.
And what is the smart driving class? Tell us about that. You got
It
about a
entails
minute.
everything we just talked about today.
But it's more in depth.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Hey, Mike, I see your wife out there. You want
Hi.
to say something to her?
Hello, Mary. How you do? Oh, you came with lunch.
She got you lunch. How nice.
There's only one bag, though. I need to
Yeah, and it doesn't look big enough for all of us,
No.
does it? Hey, John, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're a lifesaver, and I really do believe that. I believe that the people out there that are trying to keep our city safe are heroes. So thanks for all that
Absolutely.
you do. We appreciate it. And hopefully, people, you heard the show today. You heard the numbers. It's alarming. Pay attention to what's going on there. Be there for your kids, and don't take anything for granted.
Save a life.
Save a life. May be yours. Might be your kids. Huh? So I think that's about it. John, anything else you want to say?
No, I
Party?
think we got it covered. I think this city, this radio station, and all the programs they have in this valley do everything they can to enhance the life of our youth and to keep them alive and to keep them safe.
Very good. On that note, this is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Thanks for listening. Till next week.